The story begins in a quiet suburban neighborhood tucked away on the edge of a sprawling forest. The community was governed by a strict and notoriously overbearing homeowners association, the kind where board members seemed to thrive on finding petty reasons to fine residents. They were the sort of people who measured grass length with rulers, sent angry letters about trash bins left out too long, and even argued over the color of holiday decorations. I had moved there a few years earlier, drawn by the large wooded lots and the promise of peaceful evenings surrounded by nature. My property backed directly onto the forest, and I had always been an outdoorsman. Hunting, fishing, hiking. These weren't just hobbies for me. They were traditions I had grown up with. The forest behind my home felt like an extension of my land, even though technically it wasn't mine. Still, I had the proper state licenses and followed all regulations when I hunted deer or turkey during legal seasons. For the most part, my lifestyle didn't bother anyone. My neighbors mostly kept to themselves, and I respected their privacy. But the HOA board, led by a woman named Marlene, had a reputation for inserting themselves into everyone's business. Marlene was the kind of person who treated the HOA as if it were her personal kingdom, complete with rules that seemed to change depending on her mood. The trouble started one crisp November morning. Hunting season was in full swing, and I had been out early with my bow. I returned home quietly, carrying my gear, when I noticed a piece of paper taped to my front door. It was an official notice from the HOA. According to them, I was being fined for engaging in dangerous activities within community grounds. The document specifically cited hunting, claiming it was prohibited anywhere within the subdivision. I was stunned. I knew for a fact that the HOA had no authority to regulate hunting laws. Those fell under state jurisdiction. And the land where I hunted wasn't even part of the neighborhood's common property. It was state-managed forest, open to licensed hunters. The HOA had no say over it. I called the number listed on the notice, and was quickly connected to Marlene herself. Her tone was smug, almost gleeful, as she informed me that multiple residents had reported me. She said that carrying hunting equipment through the neighborhood was frightening to others and created an unsafe environment. She insisted I had to stop immediately or face escalating fines. I explained the laws, my licenses, and the fact that the HOA had no authority over state land, but she brushed me off, claiming the board had voted and the decision was final. That's when I realized this wasn't about safety or rules. It was about control. Marlene and her clique simply didn't like the idea of hunting, and they wanted to make an example out of me. The fines kept coming. Every week, I would receive another notice, each one increasing the penalty. I refused to pay, knowing they had no legal standing. I even consulted an attorney, who confirmed what I already suspected. The HOA was overreaching. They could send as many letters as they wanted, but they had no power to enforce a ban on lawful hunting outside their jurisdiction. Still, the harassment didn't stop. One afternoon, I returned home to find Marlene and two other board members standing at the edge of my driveway, glaring at me. They had clipboards in hand and were taking pictures of my truck, my gear, even my house. When I asked what they thought they were doing, Marlene said they were documenting violations for the community records. The arrogance was unbelievable. At that point, I could have gone straight to court. I could have sued them for harassment, maybe even won damages. But instead, I decided to get creative. If Marlene wanted to play power games, then I was going to play one of my own. One she would never see coming. You see, the forest behind my property had a network of trails. These weren't official park trails, but rather paths that had been privately owned for decades by a local family. That family wasn't part of the HOA, and the land technically wasn't open to the public. However, over the years, residents had started using one particular trail as their favorite walking path. It wound from the subdivision into the woods, looping around a small pond before circling back. People loved it. Joggers, dog walkers, families. Even Marlene herself was known to walk it nearly every evening. One day, while talking to a friend in town, I learned that the family who owned that land was looking to sell it. They were elderly and no longer able to maintain the property. That's when it clicked. I contacted them directly, made an offer, and within a matter of weeks, the deed was in my hands. I didn't tell anyone right away. Instead, I watched as the neighborhood continued using the trail like nothing had changed. Marlene and her friends strolled along, completely unaware that every step they took was now trespassing on land I owned. The irony was delicious. When the time was right, I put up signs at the trail entrance. Private property, no trespassing. I posted notices on community boards, informing everyone that the trail was officially closed to the public. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Residents were furious. The trail had been their favorite pastime for years, and now it was suddenly gone. Marlene stormed to my house within hours. She pounded on the door, demanding to know what gave me the right. When I calmly explained that I had purchased the land, her face turned red with rage. She sputtered about community rights and traditions, claiming the HOA had always used that trail. But tradition doesn't equal ownership, and the law was on my side. She threatened legal action, of course, but when she consulted her lawyers, she discovered the truth. The HOA had absolutely no claim to the land. It was mine to do with as I pleased, and what I pleased was to shut them out. The fallout was glorious. Without the trail, residents had nowhere nearby to walk their dogs or jog through the woods. People complained constantly at HOA meetings, directing their anger not at me, but at Marlene for provoking the whole situation. They reminded her that none of this would have happened if she hadn't harassed me over something that wasn't even under her authority. Soon, the community's frustration boiled over. Petitions circulated demanding her resignation. Attendance at HOA meetings turned hostile, with residents openly calling her out for her behavior. Eventually, Marlene was forced to step down as HOA president. Her once unshakable control shattered. Meanwhile, I enjoyed every second of peace and quiet. The fines stopped. The harassment ended. And best of all, I had reclaimed the one thing Marlene and her clique had tried to take from me: my freedom. Over time, I decided to do something even better. I didn't just keep the land closed. I improved it for myself. I built a small cabin near the pond, set up food plots to attract deer and turkey, and created my own private hunting paradise. While the HOA board members stewed in their frustration, I had transformed their favorite trail into my personal sanctuary. Looking back, I could have handled things differently. I could have fought the HOA in court, or tried to reason with them until I was blue in the face. But sometimes the best revenge isn't in words or lawsuits. It's in action. By turning their favorite place into something they could never use again, I showed them exactly what happens when they push too far. In the end, the lesson was clear. If you live in a neighborhood with a power-hungry HOA, don't let them intimidate you. Know your rights. Stand your ground. And if you get the chance, beat them at their own game. Because nothing tastes sweeter than shutting down the very thing they love most. All because they tried to take from you what was never theirs to begin with. And that's exactly how the HOA tried to fine me for hunting. So I bought their favorite trail and shut it down forever.